My name is Shannon Gagliano. I am a dietitian in New York. Thank you for joining me today. I currently work, like I said, in New York in the Northwell Health System. I specialize in colorectal and gastrointestinal disease. My goal is to help patients find both joy and safety in eating. I will be taking questions, concerns, comments live. I have someone behind the screen that can read me the comments, so please keep me posted. I look forward to hearing your feedback. So May is International Mediterranean Diet Month. I'm sure that you have heard of the Mediterranean diet before, but what are its principles? Where did it get its name, and how does this apply to you? I thought a fun way to go through the principles of the Mediterranean diet would be through a recipe. So today we will be preparing a pesto pasta with chicken and vegetables. So let's get started. The first principle that we'll go through is the fundamental principle, which is plant-based, including more plant-based foods into your diet. Plant-based foods are things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes. The recommendation is to have about 3 servings of fruit, 3 servings of vegetable per day, 2 servings of grains, 1 serving of nuts, and 2 to 3 servings of legumes per week. We'll say the components or the nutrition components we'll be focusing on today are fiber and antioxidants. Fiber is an undigestible part of the plant. It has a lot of different health benefits, including blood sugar control, cholesterol control, helping to regulate our bowel movements, and there's emerging evidence to suggest that fiber helps to feed the healthy bacteria in our gastrointestinal tract, which in turn creates something called butyrate, which feeds our colon cells to protect against inflammation. And for those of you who may be struggling with things like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or cancer, this can help to protect your body from further inflammation and keep your symptoms under control. The other component is antioxidants. Antioxidants are found in fruits and vegetables. They can help to protect our body from inflammation on a cellular level by protecting against abnormal cell growth. So I do want to point out that I know fiber can be a very tricky subject for those of you with gastrointestinal disease or colorectal diseases. You've probably at least one time in your journey been told to limit, avoid fiber, maybe to add it into your diet. It can be quite confusing. So my goal is to help people bring or reintroduce fiber into their diet as tolerated using texture modification techniques. I will point out that I don't know everybody's particular circumstance, so it's important you check with your team before you reintroduce these foods into your diet. However, when I say texture modification, what I mean by that is perhaps instead of eating a salad, you take the vegetables and you put them into a soup. Or instead of eating fruit, you make it into a smoothie. Instead of eating chickpeas, you do it in the form of pasta or hummus. So basically taking a texture, making it soft, and this will allow things to be a little bit safer in your body. I will point out the more fiber you eat, the more water you must drink, so be very diligent about that. So let's get started. So today our base will be a pasta, and we'll be using a chickpea pasta. It's higher in protein, higher in fiber than a traditional white flour pasta. It also has iron in it. For the purposes of the presentation, I did prepare it ahead of time. However, it's made the same way as regular pasta. Let the water boil, dump the pasta in, and let it cook until it's soft or al dente, depending on however you prefer it. The next component of the recipe that we'll be including is asparagus, and asparagus is a lower fiber vegetable, so most people are able to tolerate it fairly well, especially if it's just the tips and if it's cooked to be really soft. So that's exactly what we'll do. I'm just gonna cut this so that we are just using the tips. So essentially we'll be using the little top parts. It has fiber in it. It also has vitamin C, vitamin A, and some folate. Also antioxidants in the form of flavonoids. So what we will do is I will put it on this little pan here. We'll add a little bit of olive oil, and we will put this in the oven to bake. Now, my sous chef here behind the camera is going to remind me to check on that in a little bit so I don't forget about it. All right, another vegetable that we can include in this recipe is tomatoes. I will say, for those of you that are at risk for blockage, I'd be very mindful about adding tomatoes just because of the thin skin. However, we will be changing the texture to make it softer and easier to eat. Tomatoes have lots of good nutrients in it as well. Antioxidants in the form of lycopene, which can help with cardiovascular disease as well as protecting from cancer. It also has vitamin C and potassium in it. So I'm just gonna take a couple of these, chop them in half here. Is there any questions on there? No. Okay. And then what we'll do is I am going to heat up this pan again with some olive oil. Let's see. Put this on medium heat. And we'll just throw these in here and let them simmer for the next couple of minutes until they're really soft. So I'll pause here for just a second. Is there any questions regarding fiber at this point? I know this can be kind of a hot topic for gastrointestinal patients. We're good? All right, so we'll move on to the next principle, which is the incorporation of lean proteins in the diet. And lean proteins are in things like chicken, turkey, fish, eggs, and the Mediterranean diet is known for having fish in it, likely because of the location of where the diet is followed, which is along the Mediterranean Sea. So fish is important because it has a lot of good omega-3 fatty acids in it, which can help with inflammation. And for the purposes of this recipe, we will be using chicken, and we will be using a chicken breast, which is a lower in fat than other parts of the chicken. It's low in saturated fat, it has protein in it, it's got selenium, and it has vitamin B6 and niacin in it. Question?
What about juicing? Should I add more water if I'm having like kale? That's the only way I can tolerate it.
So if the whole kale is being thrown in there and it's made into like a smoothie, then yes, I would add more water. But if it's like just being a pressed juice, then you could likely use it just the way it is. But if there is fiber in there, I would definitely add more water to the mixture. All right, so we will be using this chicken. It's, like I said, lower in fat than other parts, and I'm just gonna cut it up quickly here so that we can add this later on. If you do plan to make this particular recipe, I would recommend making the chicken first, because it did take me about 45 minutes to bake this chicken at like a heat of 400. So just be mindful for your timing if that is what you want to do. So just add this here. Make sure I check on this. Okay. All right, and so the next principle we'll be touching on is healthy fats. Healthy fats are found in things like avocado, olive oil, nuts. Nuts offer healthy fat and protein as well. For the purposes of this recipe, we have used olive oil quite a few times. That's what's in here. It's high in oleic acid, which helps to protect against inflammation, and it does have an antioxidant component. We will also be using nuts for the pesto sauce. Usually in a pesto sauce, pine nuts are used. However, they're more expensive and they're kind of hard to find. So we're going to be substituting with walnuts today. And my Italian husband behind the camera, he says it's just fine that we do it this way. So it tastes really good, and it tastes pretty much the same. So we will take some of these walnuts and put them in here, and we're just going to let them roast a little bit for the pesto sauce. Check on these. Okay. The asparagus is still cooking. Okay, and then the types of fats in walnuts is we have a wide variety actually. We have omega-3 in the form of alpha-linolenic acid, which is actually a precursor for EPA and DHA, which is really important for brain health. It has omega-6 in the form of linoleic acid, which is essential, meaning our body cannot make it. We have to take it in through the diet. And then it has some oleic acid, which we discussed in the olive oil, helps to protect against inflammation. So the next principle within the Mediterranean diet is to include dairy in moderate amounts. And this is usually about 1 to 2 cups per day. However, I will preface, if you are lactose intolerant or have an allergy to dairy, this does not mean you should go and add these foods into the diet. However, if you can tolerate it, it is something that's encouraged. Greek yogurt is a great source of dairy. It's a great source of protein. It also is a natural probiotic, which can help with gut health. For the purposes of this demonstration, the dairy that we will be using is, again, for the pesto sauce, and it will be Parmesan cheese. So I'm just gonna take some of this and add it to our processor. And if you are lactose intolerant, you do not need to, it's not required that you use, that you put this in the pesto. It tastes just fine without it. Okay. All right, so the next part of the pesto, the most important part of the pesto, is the basil. Basil is a fresh herb, and some herbs are used a lot within the Mediterranean diet. Pesto has a lot of good nutrients, actually. It's rich in antioxidants. It has iron, zinc, vitamin A. And not only that, it smells really good too when it's fresh. So let me just chop some of this, and I'm just gonna put this here, rip some of this off. All right, and then another herb that we're going to add into the pesto sauce is one that's commonly used in cooking. I'm sure most of you have used it before. We will be adding garlic. Garlic has a lot of health benefits to it. It can help with cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, cancer. It even has some, we'll say, medicinal purposes in some culture, in the form of antibiotics or to help protect against inflammation. So we will be adding this into here as well. Okay, let's check on the food over here. Okay.
What's the best way to keep herbs from wilting and going bad so fast?
So, I would say either to use it as quickly as possible would be the best way to do it. To keep it dry, to keep it wrapped up, and to keep it refrigerated. Thank you for the question.
And is it better on your gut if you cook the basil?
So any food that you can change the texture of that has some fiber in it, if you're somebody that struggles with gastrointestinal disease, the best way to prepare it would be to change the texture of it. So make it softer by cooking, by blending it. It doesn't necessarily even have to be cooked, it can be blended. It just needs to be, we'll say the particle size has to decrease. So instead of the normal size, we want to change it to be as small as possible. That goes for like nuts, for example, as well. If you have a colorectal disease or risk for obstruction, or you just had surgery, I wouldn't recommend that you go and eat a whole nut. But if you take the nut and you blend it, or you take the nut and it's in the form of a nut butter, then it's generally safe for you to eat and you still get all the nutrients. By changing the texture and making it softer, you don't lose the nutritious value, but it can feel safer in your body. All right, so I'm gonna add these nuts here. Sous chef, am I missing any ingredients?
I think you're good.
Thanks. All right, so before I move on to finishing this off, I just wanted to go over again the principles of the Mediterranean diet. Number one, the foundation being to include more plant-based foods in the form of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, incorporating healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, nuts, incorporating or using lean proteins like eggs, chicken, turkey, fish, and then incorporating dairy if that's something you're able to tolerate in the form of yogurt, freshly made plain milk, kefir, and cheese. I will say the Mediterranean diet is mostly whole foods. What you'll notice is missing is anything processed. So no processed meats like bacon, sausage, ham, no processed or pre-packaged meals, no like cakes, cookies, chips, candies. Doesn't mean you cannot eat these foods, but the recommendation is just to limit it. Processed foods will be, say, pro-inflammatory, which may make your symptoms worse or make you feel worse. Is there a question?
Is lamb and veal considered lean meats?
So lamb and veal are not considered lean protein meats, but you can incorporate red meat, or we'll say not lean meat, 1 to 2 times per week safely. That's the recommendation. Within the Mediterranean diet, I know a lot of Greek people, and lamb is very popular cuisine. So it's not that you shouldn't eat it, it's just not something that we're going to have every single day.
Are there alternatives to veal and lean meat if you don't have access to them?
So if you don't have, there are different types of proteins in the form of plant-based proteins that you can definitely get enough nutrition from. So for example, like a chickpea pasta will give you protein in the form of hummus. It'll give you beans, legumes, all of these different types of plant-based foods may be a little bit more cost-effective and still offer you a plethora of different options for protein. So I do want to say, as far as with incorporating these principles, it's not always easy. And when I discuss this with my patients, I always talk about addition rather than subtraction. So I'd rather you focus on adding one new food at a time rather than worrying about changing your whole diet. Basically, I want to take your diet, your individual diet, and make it incorporate some of these principles in it. I don't want to change your whole culture. I want to make sure that we're using your culture with these particular types of foods, incorporating it with your flavors, and then again changing the texture of things to make them easier for you to eat. And I will say again, I wouldn't go from eating no fiber to eating tons of fiber after this discussion. Again, I don't know your particular circumstances. So definitely discuss with your provider beforehand, and then work with somebody who can help you find ways to include these foods in a way that the texture is a little bit easier to eat. And like I said, more fiber, more water. Fiber needs water to function, and I want to make sure you all stay very well hydrated. So let me get to this. It's going to be loud for a second. Oh, I forgot the olive oil. Right next to where it needs to be. Seconds. So now for the fun part, let's put all of this together. All right, so we're gonna take our pasta here. We're gonna add our chicken pieces. Okay, we're going to add our tomatoes. And you can really put as many vegetables or as little in here as you want. And we'll add these little guys in here. Throw some of the pesto in here. Okay. All right, now I'm just mixing it all up here. And we will plate this into our dish. All right. So, I'll move this closer. So here's the finished product. I hope that through this demonstration, I showed you that cooking could be both fun and healthy for the whole family. I hope that you see that there can be both joy and safety in eating. I want to thank the team at Connecting Pieces for inviting me to be here today. I had a lot of fun preparing this, and please let me know if you have any other questions. Thank you.